Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing for the Committee on Governmental Operations, joint with Civil Service and Labor. At this time, we ask that you please silence all electronic devices, and at no time are you to approach the dais. If you'd like to sign up for in-person testimony or have any other questions throughout the hearing, please see one of the Sergeant-at-Arms. Chair Ressler, we're ready to begin.
Good morning. My name is Lincoln Ressler, and I have the privilege of chairing the Committee on Governmental Operations, State and Federal Legislation. And this morning, I have the true privilege of co-chairing this hearing with the chair of our Labor and Civil Service Committee, Carmen de la Rosa. Her just an enormous debt of gratitude for her leadership of this committee over the past 4 years and her tremendous work on the council. So thank you. We are joined by a number of great colleagues this morning. The two lead sponsors of the bills we're hearing today, Councilmember Justin Brannan, Councilmember Keith Powers, Councilmember Lynn Schulman, Councilmember Julie Menon, and Brooklyn's own Councilmember David Carr. I got one laugh. Thank you. He got redistricted to include just a little bit of Brooklyn, and we claim him as our own. Who do we have on Zoom? Moya. And we have Councilmember Francisco Moya on Zoom. Intro 521, sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan, would establish a new Department of Emergency Medical Services with the power to oversee general ambulance services, emergency medical services, and other response services necessary to preserve public health, safety, and welfare. These functions are currently housed under the FDNY. New York City is proudly home to the first municipal ambulance service in the United States, established in 1869 at Bellevue Hospital. I think I read Hart Island opened in 1869 yesterday, so 1869 was a big year in New York City. While we have come a long way since the horse-drawn ambulances of that era, our commitment to providing fast emergency medical response services staffed by dedicated professional healthcare workers has never wavered. Since emergency medical services were merged with FDNY back in 1996 during the Giuliani administration, EMTs and paramedics have faced a number of ongoing challenges. The number of fires has decreased over 50%, while medical bills have increased dramatically. Medical calls have increased dramatically. EMTs and paramedics now respond to over 4,300 calls per day. Despite this high demand, EMTs and paramedics face challenging work conditions. Starting salaries are almost 20% lower than firefighter salaries, and this disparity grows significantly with more time on the job. After 5 years on the job, EMTs are making almost 30% less than their FDNY counterparts. This salary disparity has led to significant attrition from EMS to fire, resulting in staffing shortages and increased response times. Whether it's a fire or a heart attack, all New Yorkers take comfort in being able to call 911 and have an experienced professional swiftly respond. It is vitally important that we better recruit and retain dedicated emergency medical response workers. I'm looking forward to hearing testimony today from the leadership of the FDNY on how we can improve worker retention, decrease response times, and continue to innovate in our medical response services. I'm grateful to Councilmember Brannan for his persistent and outspoken leadership on this issue. I also want to take a moment to recognize the tragic death of Patrick Brady over the weekend. He died in the line of duty, tackling a blaze in East Flatbush. His family and the FDNY community are in all of our thoughts. I'd also just like to thank the FDNY for their incredible response to 2 large fires that we had in Greenpoint this past week on the very same block, 3 days apart. My community is really grateful to the FDNY for showing up and keeping us safe. As Chair De La Rosa will share in a moment, as she elaborates further on Intro 1261, sponsored by Councilmember Keith Powers, this legislation would help correct the pay disparity for paraprofessionals. The 24,000 paraprofessionals of New York City are essential. Students rely on paraprofessionals for everything from classroom instruction to physical assistance and help accessing specialized services. Without these dedicated professionals, 24,000 students would not be able to go to school and learn each and every day due to the city's labor practices. Paraprofessionals currently have a starting salary of just $32,000. That is just about minimum wage. Minimum wage for a paraprofessional starting out in the New York City school system. It forces them to work multiple jobs and leads to far too high vacancy rates. We routinely hear from parents who share that when their child doesn't have a para, they can't get on the bus, they have chaos at school, or they're shuffled between staff members. It's devastating. This bill is a critical step in the right direction, and we must work to improve the equity in our labor bargaining process and ensure that low-wage workers are empowered and respected at the bargaining table. I lastly just want to thank Speaker Adams for her tremendous leadership. She has continuously centered union workers, especially low-wage employees, during her tenure as our Speaker, and ensured that this body works diligently to improve working conditions for all. With that, I really want to thank our Governmental Operations Committee staff, our new committee counsel, who's terrific, Jahari Frazier, our policy analyst, Erica Cohen, for their great work in preparing for this hearing, and the great work from the team at the Labor and Civil Service Committee. And I most of all want to thank Molly Haley, who is my chief of staff and is absolutely brilliant. With that, I will turn it over to Chair De La Rosa.
Thank you.
Oh, and I just am supposed to recognize that Councilmember Frank Morano is here with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Restler. And I want to join you in sending our condolences to the FDNY for the loss of Patrick Brady. We are praying for you all and his family in this difficult time. I'm the chair of the Civil Service and Labor Committee. Thank you all for joining us for today's hearing. Specifically, I want to focus on Intro 1261, sponsored by Councilmember Powers, which seeks to address pay disparities for paraprofessionals within the Department of Education that have developed throughout the city's pattern bargaining system. Pattern bargaining is the city's longstanding practice of applying uniform, percentage-based raises across municipal unions. It is intended to promote consistency and equity across the workforce. However, over time, this approach can also widen gaps between higher and lower paid titles. For example, when all employees receive a 3% raise, those at the top of the salary scale see a much larger dollar increase than those at the bottom. Over many years, these differences compound, leaving paraprofessionals and other lower salaries employees further behind. This bill attempts to correct those disparities through an excess differential offset, a formula-based payment designed to reduce the wage gap between paraprofessionals and the DOE employees. Paraprofessionals are the backbone of our classroom. They work one-on-one with students with disabilities, assist teachers in managing classroom, and often serve as a critical link between students, families, and schools. Their work is essential to ensuring that our schools are inclusive, supporting learning environments for all students. Yet through struggle, lawsuits, and labor negotiations, paraprofessionals now earn between $32,798 and $54,541, not enough in a city as expensive as New York. As we consider this legislation, there are several. How will this bill be implemented? Who will oversee the process of calculating the excess differential offset? Municipal workforce, attract and retain top talent, address the vacancy of about 1,600 public school system in the country. This legislation most essential workers of our city, who are predominantly women of color serving our most vulnerable students. We'll hear from the Office of Labor Relations, the Department of Education, and the United Federation of Teachers and other stakeholders. Our goal today is to gain a better understanding of both the intent and the implication of the legislation, how it might advance pay equity, and what challenges might arise in implementation. We all share the same goal, ensuring the paraprofessionals who make our schools work every day are treated with fairness and respect. Today's hearing is an opportunity to take a closer look at how we achieve that balance while maintaining the city's fiscal stability and collective bargaining framework. I'd like to thank the committee staff, Senior Counsel Rie Osawara, Senior Policy Analyst Elizabeth Arts for their hard work in preparing for this hearing, as well as my staff, Chief of Staff James Burke, Legislative Director Kiana Diaz, and Communications Director Frey Familia. I also want to take a moment to congratulate Councilmember Brennan for his work and his consistent advocacy for FDNY. With that, I turn back to Chair Restler.
Thank you so much, Councilmember De La Rosa, and we have been joined by Councilmember Eric Dinowitz, a former teacher from the Northwest Bronx. And Councilmember Brewer, the former chair of this committee, is joining us as well. Thank you for being here, Gail. With that, turn it over to Justin Brannon for opening remarks.
Thank you, chairs, for holding this important hearing today. I'm Councilmember Brannon. I chair the Committee on Finance. Today's hearing is about something very simple. It's about respect. Every day, our EMTs and paramedics are first on the scene when a New Yorker stops breathing, when a child gets hurt, or when a senior slips on the subway platform. They're the ones running towards danger while everyone else runs away. During COVID, when the greatest city in the world was on its knees, it was EMS workers who went into apartments, nursing homes, and hospitals, often without proper protection to save lives. Some got sick, some died, but they kept showing up because they always show up. These are working people doing some of the hardest, most dangerous, and most emotional work in city government, and they've been treated like second-class public servants for decades. Despite all that, they earn far less than firefighters or police officers, even though they face the same risks and carry the same sense of duty. When you call 911, an operator says, "Do you need police, fire, or medical?" All in the same breath. For that moment, they're all equals. But when payday comes, our EMS workers are treated much differently. We simply cannot have second-class first responders in this city. And that's exactly what we have right now, a class system of first responders, and our street doctors are at the bottom. Many EMS workers, the majority of whom are women and people of color, are working 2 or even 3 jobs just to pay the bills and make ends meet. They love what they do, but love doesn't pay the rent. They shouldn't have to choose between saving lives and supporting their families. Right now, morale is low, headcount is down, response times are up, and when good people leave because they can't afford to stay, the whole city feels it, every neighborhood and every borough. Intro 521 is about fixing that imbalance. It's about undoing a 30-year-old merger between FDNY and EMS. It's about saying that emergency medicine deserves its own leadership, its own budget, its own respect, not as a bureau buried inside another agency, but as a department that is solely dedicated to saving lives. This isn't already have standalone EMS agencies that deliver excellent service, and we can do the same. This is about fairness and focus, about building a system where the people who respond to 75% of our 911 calls have leadership of their own that wakes up every single day thinking about them. So today we're here to ask, what is holding us back? What's really stopping New York City from doing right by the people who do right by us every single day? And I look forward to speaking to the Commissioner about this today. Thank you all.
With that, I will turn it over to Committee Counsel to swear in our witnesses.
All right, we will now hear testimony from the administration. Before we begin, I will administer the affirmation. Panelists, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Commissioner.
Good morning, Chair De La Rosa and Chair Ressler and members of the Committee on Civil Service and Labor and the Committee on Governmental Operations. My name is Robert Tucker, and I am the New York City Fire Commissioner. I'm joined today by Mark Guerra, the First Deputy Fire Commissioner, Paul Miano, the Acting Chief of Emergency Medical Services, Lizette Kristoff, the Deputy Commissioner for Management and Budget, and Associate Commissioner Nafisa Noonan, who heads up recruitment and retention. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss Intro 521, which would separate EMS from FDNY. Thank you also, it's been a difficult week for the FDNY family. Thank you for recognizing that. In fact, we have a seriously injured firefighter in the Bronx, so that's some of the commotion that's going on here. He's currently being transferred to Jacobi Hospital from another hospital in the Bronx, and our prayers are with him as well. Let me start by stating clearly that I understand the intention behind this proposal. The sponsors want to improve pre-hospital care in the city, to save more lives, which is a sentiment that I wholeheartedly share. So I want to begin my testimony by thanking the members of the council for your attention to the obstacles that plague EMS, because it is this issue that I think about first thing each morning when I wake up, continuously throughout the day, and when I'm lying in bed each night. FDNY emergency medical technicians and paramedics and officers are the lifeblood of the FDNY. They are real-life superheroes who put their own lives on the line to provide care for the rest of us, often when we are in our moments of greatest need. The legislation that we're discussing today is meant to improve the circumstances of those EMTs and paramedics and to enhance their compensation. That's a topic that I care very deeply about. In my time as commissioner, I've been privileged to have numerous conversations with council members about this topic, and I have found it very helpful to brainstorm solutions. In particular, I've had very productive conversations with Chair Ariola and Chair De La Rosa about overcoming the current challenges that face EMS. Unfortunately, Intro 521 is not a solution to these challenges. Separating EMS from the fire department is a misguided suggestion that would not solve the crisis of EMS. Instead of improving capabilities and enhancing the compensation of EMS members, this legislation would accomplish precisely the opposite. It would make EMS less effective, less efficient, and it would put EMS members in worse circumstances. The EMS unions are currently in negotiations with the Office of Labor Relations on a new contract. However, creating a new agency would not change that existing dynamic of working out a contract through collective bargaining with the Office of Labor Relations. But even beyond salary issues, I can sit here today and say unequivocally that more resources are needed to truly enhance existing EMS operations. To give you an illustrative example, on an average day, we have a half a dozen or so first-line EMS supervisors sitting at their desks inside their stations because their vehicles that they would ordinarily use to travel throughout the division are out of service for repair. The way to solve that problem is for the city to invest in additional spare apparatus, to hire more mechanics, and to better compensate the existing mechanics so that our fleet shops run more efficiently and effectively. All of that requires funding to improve operations. And for those of you who have gotten to know me, you know that I bring a specific set of skills with me to this job. Prior to joining government, I was the CEO of a successful family business focused on public safety. And as your FDNY commissioner, I often take a CEO-style approach to running the department, which typically begins with finding ways to eliminate redundancies, to create efficiencies, and to improve our overall output for the public. However, the proposal that the council is considering today would be enormously costly for the city and divert a significant portion of funds needed to improve operations toward redundancies and fiscal waste. After all, why pay administrative costs twice if it's only necessary to pay them once? To put it bluntly, instead of seeking efficiencies and putting this funding directly towards improving EMS operations, this legislation would have the opposite impact that the sponsors, I believe, intend. By separating EMS from the fire department and creating a new standalone agency, the council would be imposing a slew of redundant costs on the city and ultimately on the taxpayers. It takes a small army of dedicated individuals behind the scenes to run the greatest fire and emergency services agency in the world. Data analysts, compliance officers, budget specialists, all would need to be duplicated in a new agency. Auditors, engineers, community coordinators, radio shop technicians, executive staff, construction project managers, and contracting and procurement officers. Human resources costs would be duplicated. Legal affairs costs would be duplicated. Communications costs would be duplicated. Strategic planning and data analytics would be duplicated. All of this would need to be created at an enormous cost to the city, where if used appropriately, those scarce resources would go directly towards improving the availability of pre-hospital care for our nearly 9 million residents and solving the EMS conundrum once and for all. And for these extensive added costs, this change would leave the people of New York with a diminished EMS service. The costs of repairing facilities and maintaining our fleet of vehicles, which is one of the most extensive in the city, would be entirely duplicated. The city would lose the efficiencies that we currently have in our consolidated fleet operations with our shared specialists, such as mechanics, who shift between fire apparatus and EMS apparatus all day long. Out of service time for EMS vehicles would skyrocket. I also worry that creating a gap between fire and EMS would endanger the seamless integration of services and care. While their duties and training are distinct, they all play a critical role in delivering services. EMTs and paramedics work side by side with firefighters at emergencies every single day. EMTs operate at fires and firefighters operate at medical emergencies. That close relationship is critical not just to members of the public, but to EMTs, paramedics, and firefighters themselves. A firefighter who is injured at a fire knows that he or she is going to be assisted by a fellow firefighter and then immediately receive the best possible care from a highly trained member of FDNY EMS, who already are on the scene as part of the overall department's emergency response protocol. I say it all the time, the FDNY is one big family, made up of firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and civilians. I speak to the members of both fire and EMS operations every single day. All of them take immense pride in wearing the iconic patch of the greatest emergency response agency in the world. A separate EMS agency would undoubtedly endeavor to provide greater care, but removing that synergy and forcing a divorce of fire and EMS services would have unintended consequences that would make our members and the public less safe. It'll also needlessly complicate civil service and promotional opportunities within the department and leave both agencies recruiting new members from the same or similar pools of candidates. In closing, our shared objective is clear: to provide the highest standard of emergency care to every New Yorker every day. But with a finite number of resources, duplicating functions and creating new layers of bureaucracy will not get us there. So today, I'm asking in the council to reject this legislation. Instead, the department is ready to work together to make real improvements to EMS and real improvements to the care that we provide for the people. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take your questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Tucker, for that clear and compelling testimony. I'll first turn it over to Chair De La Rosa.
Thank you, Commissioner Tucker. I understand the operational concerns that you have on the legislation. I do have to ask, though, or I wouldn't be the labor chair, then what is the response to the pay disparity that exists right now between the EMS workers and firefighters? And what can be done to address that pay disparity at this time?
Yeah, as you know, the collective bargaining process between the EMTs and paramedics and the Office of Labor Relations are going on as we speak. I do not sit at the table for those conversations. However, OLR's here, and I would highly encourage you to ask them the same question.
We will. Have you retained conversations with the EMS, EMT in your department to ask them about their wishes as plans go forward for the future of their scope of work?
I speak to EMTs and paramedics and Chief Miano and his executive staff multiple times a day, every single day of the week. And yes, I speak to them about the working conditions. I'm out in the field perhaps more than any other commissioner's ever been out in the field, and I see it firsthand. I've been, to almost every EMS station in the city already more than one time, and what I would say is that I'm in constant communication with them.
Is there a feeling that they want to separate?
I don't get that feeling right now at all. I think the morale that they have of being part of the greatest fire department in the world matters. I think wearing this patch matters, but I would highly encourage you to speak to the union who are sitting behind me also. I have.
Me too. Testimony from previous hearings has stated that 5% of the EMS workforce has separated from the FDNY this year. Does this number include everyone who leaves FDNY, or only those who have left both FDNY and city employment altogether? It's kind of a three-part question, but that's the first part of that question.
So can we take, just because I'm a
Sure.
little slow, can we take it one at a time? So
Yes.
the first question is the number, you're asking if 5% is the right number? I'm going to ask Chief Miano
Yes.
to address that.
Yes.
So I have those numbers here for you.
Thank you.
In regards to members who have left city service altogether, the FDNY altogether, that is a 5% so far year to date in 2025 of EMTs. And for paramedics, it's lower. That would be 2.6%.
Okay. Thank you for answering that part. How often do members of the EMS transition to position in other agencies? And do you have a sense of where EMS workers end up if they transition to other agencies?
While that does happen, I don't have those numbers for you, and we'll be happy to get that to you.
Great. How often do EMS staff get promoted out of EMS into positions of firefighters?
We have a promotional exam that allows that to happen. We have an academy class going on right now with 200, we're just under 200 now, all of whom come from EMS.
Oh, okay. Those are both of my questions. I'll pass them over to Chair
Wonderful.
Ressler.
Would like to invite Councilmember Brannan to ask a few questions as well.
Thank you, chairs. I guess some of the answers you just gave is sort of why we're here, right? It seems like right now we're cannibalizing ourselves, right? So I mean, we're losing. I'll go into an EMS station and I'll ask people there who's been here for more than 5 years, and maybe 3 people raise their hand. Most of the people are waiting just to get the call from FDNY, and most of them, if they're being honest, would say I'd rather be an EMT or a paramedic, but the pay is so low that if FDNY calls my number, I'm going to take that job. And now we have veterans on EMS who have been there for 4 years. That's not a veteran, right? So how do we fix that?
Yeah, I'm laser focused on that. I hear you, and I agree that there's a very significant migration that I think was started long before I was the commissioner, but as a backdoor into EMS, it's clearly the very big front door into the fire service, fire operations now. There are multiple prongs to fixing that problem, but a standalone agency doesn't solve that problem because, again, when you talk about all the administrative costs that are going to be needed, the separate facilities, there's going to be a commissioner. You're going to need 2 commissioners. You're going to need 2 of most everyone at this table. Forgetting about recruiting, lawyers, HR. I mean, there's just. How is that helping the emergency medical technicians and paramedics in the field?
I mean, I am, as sponsor of the bill, I am willing to concede that I wouldn't even be pushing this idea if our EMTs and paramedics were being treated like human beings. The reason why we're here is because we have this class system with our first responders, and OLR is not negotiating in good faith. They refuse to even recognize EMS as a uniform service. They've been without a contract since June of 22. It doesn't feel like, I mean, you're saying the right stuff, but OLR is not backing you up. What you're saying about how you feel about EMS, have you mentioned that to OLR?
I speak to Renee, frequently, and yes, I have mentioned it to.
So what are they doing? What are they doing?
I would encourage you to speak to OLR. They're here in the room, and you could talk to them. I mean, my position has been crystal clear for the last 15 months that I've been the fire commissioner that EMS is a vital part of the lifeblood of the FDNY. It's frankly the future of the FDNY when you think about 50% of the work that our engine companies, the big red trucks, are doing is responding to EMS calls. And that number is going to grow. You're talking about nearly 1.6 million calls for service a year. This thing's a crisis. I've said it publicly that it is the biggest crisis in public safety that we are now just first talking about. And I'm really glad to see that. And I'm really glad that all of you are focused on it now. But I don't believe that this is the solution because this is not addressing anything for the EMTs and paramedics who are actually doing the hard work.
So would you say about FDNY handles mostly medical calls at this point?
No, I would say that medical calls is a big part of our responsibility as
Right.
well as general public safety and first responding to fires and car accidents. We are the rescuers of New York City now as well.
But for medical calls, the folks, the street doctors are the ones who are being treated like secondary, they're a secondary branch inside the department.
They're not to this commissioner. They're not a secondary branch. They are an equal branch, but there's no doubt that there is a crisis and that it needs to be addressed, and that we are beginning to try to find unique solutions to addressing that. Response time for me is just one of the metrics, but I think patient outcomes is also a metric that we should measure. You know, when we talk about response times as part of our failure, we're managing response times now because of the limited resources that we have. And so we're purposely delaying certain calls, elevating our response times to try to affect patient outcomes for sicker people who need an ambulance faster. There is a limited amount of resources that we have, and we can do a lot better. And thank you all for for having this open conversation and dialogue, because we all have to work together in order to make it better.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, Boston, Austin, Texas, Pittsburgh, San Antonio, they all have standalone EMS agencies. So this isn't a crazy idea.
No, I didn't suggest it was a crazy idea. In fact, our neighboring friends in Westchester have completely privatized and hired a private company to do it, with the exception.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah, with the exception of certain volunteer ambulance services in villages and towns. There are many permutations and combinations that you could put forward, but there's no doubt for me that the emergency medical service of New York City has become, the E in EMS has become somewhat irrelevant. We're responding to boo-boos all day long, which is also affecting the morale of my EMTs and paramedics. And so I think we are finally looking at it like I would look at a business problem, and we are finally trying to address it, even talking to some of the private hospitals about alternative transportation. Don't forget, though, when we get on the scene, the law doesn't allow us to abandon that patient unless someone of a higher medical authority arrives on the scene. And so we end up spending 2 hours on the scene of a boo-boo, and in those 2 hours, people are having heart attacks and strokes, and we can't get there fast enough.
So if we don't separate and we don't undo the merger, how do we fix this structural change? How do we make structural change here?
I think we're well on the way to fixing it. We've got new leadership in the acting chief of EMS. We're making some leadership changes at the top actively. I think we are trying some recycled ideas, like paramedic response units out in the field, which are non-transport vehicles, where paramedics are now responding to our sickest patients, but they're not transporting them. That transportation from the scene to the hospital, the average waiting time once we arrive at the hospital is over 40 minutes. And so if we can take our most highly skilled field technicians, paramedics, and get them to bounce from scene to scene to scene and not be responsible for transportation to the hospital and waiting for the hospital to triage the patient, sign off on the patient, and actually take the patient, we're getting to sicker people faster. In the hospitals that we're having the most difficulty with that 40-minute average, we've now assigned a hospital liaison officer. We've taken a supervisor off the street, put them into the emergency room, and we've got them coaxing along both the hospital staff and my staff to get back in the ambulance and get on the road to address the next sick patient. So I think we're innovating. We've undertaken to build a very, very sophisticated, state-of-the-art new computer-assisted dispatching platform. That platform is going to sit on top of the very successfully created Fire CAD. So if you separate these agencies, that's going to go from $40 million to $80 million. But right now, we think we can efficiently put it right on top of FireCAD so that you can see everything that's happened both on fire operations and EMS operations at the same time. We're going to incorporate the latest and most sophisticated data analytics and predictive analytics and AI into something like that to help us make better, faster decisions about what resources belong where. Right now, we're not state of the art. We're on our way to being it.
Do you believe that all first responders, anyone, when you call 911, the operator says, do you need police, fire, and medical? Do you believe that they should all have pay parity?
You know, what my members get paid, unfortunately, is not my responsibility, so I would refer you to OLR on that.
But would you advocate for that? If OLR had the fire commissioner saying that I believe that EMS deserves pay parity, deserves to be recognized as a uniform service, I think they'd take that in consideration.
I think that the jobs are distinct, but nevertheless, I think pay is certainly one factor.
It's a big factor.
But it is just one factor of a multi-pronged approach to solving this crisis. You're right, it's a big factor, but it's just one factor.
So you don't want to say on the record if you think EMS deserves pay parity?
I wouldn't say it. It's inappropriate in my role as fire commissioner.
Do you think they should be recognized as a uniform service?
You know, there's a question for OLR.
But Commissioner, you're saying...
I'll just note, we're fortunate that OLR is the next panel, so we can ask those questions.
I'll just say that, and you're saying all the right stuff, but then when we get to brass tacks and I say, should they be seen as a uniform service, should they get pay parity, you plead the fifth.
I'm not pleading the fifth. I'm simply saying that there's a more appropriate person in the administration to ask the question to, and what I would say is that they're here in the room, and I,
okay.
you know,
my goal is that I want all of our first responders to be paid well for the jobs they do, for the bravery and courage.
And on that, I would agree with you.
Yeah. And it's you know, cops. I think ultimately, paying EMS and recognizing them as a uniform service or giving them their own agency would ultimately help. I want to help firefighters too. I want all of these people to just get the respect and the dignity that they deserve. And I'm worried right now that that's not what we have, because we're basically, EMS is like the old Tidewater Tides of the New York Mets. And that's not what we want, right? We want it to be that I want a career as an EMT or a paramedic, not, hey, I hope I get my call and I can then leave EMS.
I respectfully disagree, but nevertheless, I think we agree on a lot of things that you're saying. I just don't think that the best solution is to stand up another agency where mostly the limited financial resources of the administration would have to go to duplicating people like me and Commissioner Guerra and Commissioner Kristoff instead of perhaps compensating the members.
Well, if OLR gets up here today and says they'll give them pay parity and recognize them as uniform service, I'll pull my bill.
Again, I respectfully disagree that, and I would also just say that I think being focused on parity is what's derailing progress.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Councilmember
Chair.
Brannan. We have been joined by Harlem's own Councilmember Yusuf Salam and Councilmember Ina Vernikov of Brooklyn. I will pass it over to Councilmember Carr, followed by Councilmember Schulman.
Thank you so much, Chairs. Commissioner, always a pleasure to see you. I want to also extend my condolences on the loss of firefighter Patrick Brady. Just terrible day for the department and the city, and of course for his family. And I think it underscores just how dangerous the job is and how important it is that we support our uniformed services. We've talked a lot about EMS, you and I, recently, Commissioner, and I know it's a priority for you because it's been taking up so much of your headspace and your time as Commissioner. But you keep talking about this multi-prong approach that's necessary to sort of better the professional position of EMS. And you said it's not just parity, it's not just, you know, any one particular thing. Can you give us a little bit more detail on some of the things that you would like to see happen in the new calendar year? Particularly, we're 2 months away from the preliminary budget. The budget discussions begin again. We're 2 months away from a new session in Albany. What
what are some of the things that we should be thinking about as we approach the new budget process and as our colleagues in Albany convene for a new session that could be helpful to this?
Thank you, Councilmember Carr. There's no doubt there are other things like our facilities. We have about 40 EMS stations, and some of them look different than others. I think we could focus on that. I think we could focus on our fleet. I mentioned it in my prepared remarks. I mean, we have interestingly, our ambulance fleet is in the best shape it's ever been in, but our supervisory vehicles are not, and we should be focusing on that. Look, just generally, I think we have to focus on the types of calls that the EMTs and paramedics are being brought to. When you're a highly skilled paramedic and you're going to someone who essentially is just calling for a car service to be transported to the hospital, it's demoralizing. And I think we need to really focus on how we triage calls, and that's why I'm so excited about building the new EMS CAD. So I think that's 3 examples of things we could focus on in the next calendar year. Unfortunately, I won't be there, but I have set up a very, very comprehensive strategic plan, and I would encourage whoever becomes the next fire commissioner to take a look at it.
Do you have a sense of the dollar value of the capital commitment that would be needed to address some of the things you're talking about, the facilities, the fleet, et cetera?
We testified here before Chair Ariola's committee and asked for $1 billion. I don't think that we didn't get it, but we think that overall, the average age of our firehouses is over 100 years. We have their homes. Our members sleep there. And yet we have leaking roofs. We have some facilities that are in EMS that are getting to the point where they're not habitable. And for me, if you want to once and for all address the crisis that we are in, then we've got to address it holistically, and pay is just one prong of a multi-pronged set of solutions.
One of the things I've heard anecdotally that I think kind of gives some real substance to the situation is how often our EMTs are put physically in danger, and are assaulted. What's some of the SOPs FDNY has in these situations for sort of after somebody has been on the receiving end of an attack like that, and the care they get afterwards and the support?
I appreciate that, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, because one critical factor when that happens, and I'm sick when that happens, just so you know, but when that happens, we deploy our fire marshals at that. They are police officers embedded within the fire department. They're firemen who go to the police academy and are promoted to the rank of fire marshal. And our fire marshals provide security at EMS facilities. They provide all of the investigative support to make an arrest if something like that happens. When you have a separate standing agency, you're not going to have that kind of attention. I would say that our fire marshals work on EMS assault cases consistently and make arrests there consistently.
I appreciate the answers to those questions, and I think that, look, this is obviously an urgent need, and I'm glad you're recognizing that. Our EMTs need our support, our paramedics need our support, and look forward to working with whoever sits in your chair. Hopefully they have the same energy and enthusiasm for this issue as you do. Thank you, chairs.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Carr, for always such thoughtful questions. I will now turn it over to Councilmember Brewer.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think you're going to be missed tremendously. Just want to say that. 2 quick questions. One is, from what you're saying, and maybe this is in your strategic plan, I certainly know about some of the, like 23rd Street definitely needs a new home, as an example. They're under a bridge. And so that is all of the capital needs. So I assume that your strategic plan would say capital needs X and then parity at the same time, because the persons I know in EMS do want to be firefighters. That's really what they are there for. And so we want them to stay as their miraculous talents save people's lives. So Question number one is that what is in the strategic plan, number one? Number two, Northwell, which is not you, but you mentioned public hospitals, or you mentioned hospitals. That's when I perked up. They pulled out of the east side and the west side of Manhattan. I wrote a very upset letter about that. So my question would be, secondly, as we're dealing with your issues, are Northwell's pulling out? That means more pressure on your folks. Is that happening across the city? These hospitals are not doing their job.
Yeah, thank you for your questions, and also thank you for recognizing what you did at the beginning. What I would say about Northwell, which is a absolutely tremendous partner of ours, and I am in both direct conversations with the Greater New York Hospital Association, Ken Rasky and his team, and in direct conversations with the CEOs of all of the hospital systems, including Northwell. They all want the same thing. They want to save people's lives. They want to be an active participant in pre-hospital care. And you know, for them, it's an economic equation just like it is for us.
They're supposed to be nonprofits. May I say that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to decide how to allocate their own resources. We're very lucky to have them on the 911 system, but make no mistake about it, whether they're on it or not on it, FDNY EMS is going to be there for people who are sick and need help. The West Side, issue is an issue, and
They took it out of East Side too. Well,
yeah, I've asked Northwell to reconsider, and they did. They extended it, the deadline.
Correct.
Again, it's a bit of a business negotiation that we're having, but we, I have been public about the fact that I want to bring patients who are picked up by ambulance to the closest hospital. That's what we do with our sickest patients. What I don't want to do, if God forbid someone was sick here in this room, I don't want to bring them and so we've had
I'm going to ask a few questions. We've just been joined by Councilmember Ariola, our minority leader. I'm not totally clear why she's not sitting in this seat today and why I'm, but the council works in mysterious ways, and we're happy that she's here and appreciate her. Ask if you want to go now, you can, or I can go and give you some time to get organized. You want? All right, we'll take some time. I'll ask some questions and we'll pass it over to Councilmember Ariola. Back in 1996, when Mayor Giuliani merged EMS and FDNY EMS from Health and Hospitals, or Health and Hospitals Corporation at the time, he cited response times as the kind of motivating factor in that decision in moving EMS to the fire department. At the time, it was an average of an 8-minute response time. Response times have continued to be a challenge over the past several years. In the MMR, the Mayor's Management Report, we found that response times for life-threatening medical emergencies are actually at 10 minutes now, and response times for non-life-threatening emergencies are at 19.5 minutes. How would moving back to an independent agency impact response times?
I think it would be a disaster for response times. I think that response times are a metric that I'm very focused on, and we are monitoring it literally second by second. But as I said before, response time is something that we're managing, and we manage it up. And so these numbers in the MMR are up, but we manage it up because of what we're doing every day is a logistical business where we're trying to decide where to put the resources that we have. So if we have a boo-boo in Central Park and a cardiac arrest on 57th Street and 5th, we're going to hold the boo-boo call, and we're going to raise the average response times as a result of that in order to get a fast response to the cardiac arrest on 57th and 5th, which is at the southwest corner of Central Park. So it's a little bit fabricated to use response times as the metric of measurement. What I would say, again, like a lot of my answers, is it is a one in critical metric, but traffic patterns have changed in New York City. We've made streets more narrow in New York City. There's so many other factors to
Staffing challenges?
Staffing challenges, no doubt. But the truth is that it is a factor. I think we can't get ourselves focused on a one solution fix to the biggest crisis in public safety. And so if we broaden our lens and start looking at it in more of a 360-degree approach, believe me, I'm laser focused on response times. If you came to my office, I have flat screen TVs that are literally telling me all of that in exact real time, color coded, green, red. So I'm all over that.
No, I'm pleased to hear that. Commissioner Tisch has said similarly, and it's because we've seen response times move in such a negative direction over the course of the Adams administration. It's required your and her attention on it during the latter years of his term. One of the critiques that we've often heard is that FDNY is fundamentally